Seems like I was just in this room 10 hours ago. Actually, I was. So we are going to discuss what happened in OTT in the last 10 hours since we started the program. No, we're actually going to discuss what's happening in the business of OTT. We have some of the most exciting companies in the space on stage with us. I'm going to start out at the end there, let them introduce themselves quickly with Daniel Schneider from Cheddar.
Hi, I run business development and distribution at Cheddar. Cheddar is a news company which has two networks, Cheddar Business, which focuses on executive interviews at the New York Stock Exchange, as well as in LA and DC and such. And then we have Cheddar News, which is a general headline news network. And distribution is across a bunch of AVOD services, MVPDs, and VPDs.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that Cheddar has really fascinating guests on, probably about once a month. We'll see a really fascinating guest on there talking about OTT, so y'all should tune into it.
That's great.
Anyone in particular you wanted to mention?
No, just in general,
Frank Sinter, I'm the founder and president of Beachfront Media. So Beachfront actually enables publishers and MVPDs to monetize their content programmatically. So we have a platform that's now enabled both VOD and OTT advertising.
Jeff Schultz, I'm the Chief Business Officer at Pluto TV. I'm responsible for content acquisition, programming, and distribution. We're a free streaming television service. In fact, I can say we're the largest free streaming television service in the U.S. We used to be, as an independent private company, started pretty private with our numbers, but now our numbers are reported on a quarterly basis. And so Bob Baksh, the CEO of Viacom, recently reported that we have 16 million monthly active users. That's up from 12 million 3 months ago when the acquisition was announced. We offer a host of programming, but largely organized into a linear programming guide that looks and feels a lot like television. Over 100 channels, including news and movies, some sports, but largely content you've seen on television before. I buried the lead. Recently, Viacom acquired Pluto TV and is embracing Pluto as one of its growth strategies going forward. And we can probably talk a little bit more about specifics.
So before you go, Colin, just so the audience has a sense of the scope of this, how are they how is Mr. Baksh defining a monthly average user?
Monthly active user.
Active user. Okay,
so it's a pretty simple definition. So it's not a definition of potential reach. It's not a definition of the devices that we're installed on. It is a count, a measure of the number of users who use Pluto on any platform in a given month.
Okay. And
thanks, Ellie. Yes, hi, I'm Colin Petrie-Norris. I'm the CEO of XUMO. We're not quite the largest free streaming TV service, but we're like Pluto, or engaged in a similar way. The little difference on XUMO's side is we've been very focused on building white label or enterprise streaming platforms for some of the largest TV companies, LG, Hisense, and then we've a couple of them here today, but and really building and designing and then operating the TV platform on their behalf. We have our own direct-to-consumer business, and then recently, quite an exciting new project for us is powering T-Mobile's what they call Metro Play experience on Android phones. The screen, when you swipe right off your thumbnails, your icons on all Android phones, is now a XUMO real estate with all of our same channels and videos. So that's something rolling out for a little while, and there's already millions of phones. So
and that's in addition to whatever they do with Layer 3 or
that
in
is
conjunction.
It is a separate project. It is a free experience. All users get it. It comes with the phone, so it's a native feature in the phone, right, welded into the operating system.
Gotcha. Now, before we get into this, I did have a question. So we know what Cheddar refers to in Pluto and Beachfront. XUMO, what's the name?
XUMO was a late night GoDaddy session with a couple of cocktails trying to find a 4-letter acronym that rhymed with FUBO, Philo. It seems to be in vogue at the moment.
Okay.
It also comes last alphabetically on all the sort of the corporate list, so yeah, maybe that was a misstep.
The X is unique, right? Well, look at the crowd here. It's pretty cool. So I'm going to start. I'm going to head start back to you now. So just because you're sitting here, and that was a good answer. So ad-supported OTT. I thought. I mean, how did that come about? Like, I thought Netflix was going to kill off advertising. You know, the media was all about, oh, no one's watching ads anymore. It's all, you know, going away. And yet we've got this booming ad-supported OTT market. Like, what happened?
I think the breakthrough was, you know, I think Pluto had a similar sort of experience or benefit from it. But, you know, I think the act of curating 4 or 5 years ago, then short form or, you know, digital assets from providers that had up to then just had Facebook or social media way, you know, to reach their audience. The act of curating them into a 24-hour channel and having it a set, you know, in good integration into a TV meant somebody would, instead of just watching 2 or 3 clips on YouTube when they've got nothing else to do,
right,
would suddenly watch 60 or 70 videos in a session, you know, hours of consumption. And what that did for your users, you know, the user number is important, but what's really exciting is the time these users are spending per session and per month. And it drives massive opportunities.
Well, how much time do they spend?
They're spending, you know, anything on a TV that 3 or 4 hours a session is possible. So, and I think what that does is, even though we keep the ad loads well below cable TV, it still drives a lot of ad opportunities for ad partners.
And what was you were the pioneers. So what had that?
So Colin is absolutely right that there was 2 sort of truths 5-6 years ago that companies like Pluto and XUMO ran counter to. One was free in the age of subscription, right? If you had a blog 5 years ago where you're trying to get people to subscribe to it, there was a sort of common knowledge that advertising business models were dying. Or insufficient to support media businesses, and it's simply not true, and that gave companies like ours the runway to build the businesses we have. And then the other is, as Colin was pointing out, the sort of magic of curated linear experience is linear in the age of on-demand. I was previously at CBS, and I can't count the number of times I said, what you want, when you want, how you want, right? As if that was the only paradigm to offer consumers choice in media. And it turns out most people, most often, don't know what they want. And that's the magic of linear. And then you combine that with just broadly supportive trends that were out of our hands. We're proud of the execution, but the fact is there are an increasing number of people who aren't subscribing to cable, whether they're cutting the cord or they're young people who haven't yet subscribed to cable, or are simply, you know, not going to subscribe for the 3rd or the 4th subscription beyond Netflix and Amazon Prime, perhaps, to connected television. That even if you have cable, you have a TV, at least one TV that's connected to the internet, and that creates an over-the-top channel to reach those consumers with these really compelling content experiences. And then third is that advertisers are starting to show up, and I think that's the topic you want to cover today. That
we'll get to it, but just, you know,
that increasing, like, had we built these businesses and advertisers weren't hungry to reach those consumers that we were now assembling on these connected devices, then maybe it was all for nothing. But it turns out that advertisers are eager to reach, to extend their reach to these increasingly difficult to reach consumers.
Right. And just so the sort of scenario that you described, it's sort of similar, isn't it, to why, say, Spotify's daily mixes took off, right? People just were like, you know what, I'm tired of choosing.
So we had a bit of an inside tip on that. So our chairman was the chief content officer previously at Spotify. It was the first US-based employee at Spotify. And he was well aware in the early days that despite the fact that one of the, like, a premise of Spotify is virtually infinite choice, you can just choose what to listen to, that virtually all of the listening was taking place in the form of playlists where music fans were handing over the controls to someone else. And we thought there was a direct analogy to video, and it turns out there simply was.
I was going to ask you, I'll ask you, and then if you want to add, but I did have a question. So why news? I mean, wasn't you know, BuzzFeed enough for millennials? Like, what made you guys decide that there was a need for an actual news network?
So if you think about the news out there now, in particular the business news, which is how Cheddar started, There's CNBC, there's Fox Business. The audiences for those networks are in their 60s. And so there's really no one coming in under that age group, and so that's what Cheddar did. And there's so much white space there. And you know, what are people like under the age of 60 or 20s and 30s, which is our core demographic, excited about? It's tech. It's Uber, Tesla, Facebook, Snap, Twitter, etc. Companies like that you want to learn about. It's not kind of boring industrials and manufacturing.
Gotcha. Now, Frank, your company does places the ads on this. So, and I know you had some insane statistic just to kind of set the table, and then we'll get into it about it was like something like 1,600% or something rise this last year in ad calls. What was that?
Yeah, so we've been in the business of OTT for about 5 years now, monetizing OTT, and just in the past, I would say 12 months to 18 months, I think the usage has really increased over the last 5 years, but it's been like the thing that's startling is the amount of buyers now buying OTT, right? So just a couple years ago, like you could barely find any buyers out there. And now all of a sudden, as we sort of reach a critical mass of scale, the buyers are really starting to embrace OTT. They can measure it better. They have some of their own data they can apply to it. So it became one of those things where it just catapulted, right? So like we went from about 2 years ago, OTT was maybe 10% of our business, and now 70% of our business. So it's really been sort of skyrocketing, just like crazy, because the buyers are actually like flocking towards OTT buys. They can get it, basically they can get advertising on the big screen, on the TV set, but more targeted, right? So more targeted to the audience they actually want to buy. They're willing to pay more for that.
Okay. And now how does that actually work? Like, when you guys set out, like, what's your pitch to advertisers? And is everything that you sell addressable?
Yeah, it's all built on latest generation ad tech, and to the consumer it plays like a traditional experience, but it's more relevant ads, slightly less of them, so it's a great experience. One of the
define slightly less, like, so figure
a third to a half the ad load of cable TV is the current sort of typical plan.
And where are you guys at in that same range?
10 to 12 minutes an hour, so half-ish, maybe a little bit more.
Right.
Yeah, and we're across the board. We're about half of a traditional TV ad load. And
it's interesting, we adjust dynamically in real time ad strategies, watching the engagement of consumers across the channel. And one sort of a little side departure, but one of the biggest sort of insights for me or lessons learned was when you're running digital advertising, but in linear, it's actually very different to the strategy for pre-roll. We had to learn not to make as much money as possible in every ad instance, because if you just let advertisers buy and you take the highest bidder in every ad slot in a linear program, you get ad repetition, you get 90-second pharmaceutical ads running back to back. So we actually have to optimize to take less dollars in every moment, because we want that user to keep watching to the end of the hour, come back the next day, come back the next month. So it's a re-architecture of the whole ad system for linear is very different to what people think is digital advertising. It's auction-based yield optimization in the moment. It's more yield optimization over time has become more important.
Yeah, when it comes down to an OTT, you can track every ad and like you get really focus on the pod. So like what's the pod length? What kind of ads are in the pod? How are they working with each other? Right, so you can track all these things, and like, is there user drop off? So you can adjust things pretty dynamically as you're looking at the pods within your content, right? So that's like the power of OTT advertising. You can sort of adjust those knobs like as you see users react to it.
Oh. Yeah, Jeff, you guys are now part of the greater Viacom empire. Where does Pluto fit into that ad scheme right now?
Well, in terms of advertising sales revenue is one of several ways we plug in. It's relatively straightforward. I mean, we now can leverage a relationship with a massive sales force with deep relationships, lots of money changing hands, and whose clients are interested in extending their reach. And one of the things that Viacom leadership saw, particularly in Pluto, obviously they saw a growth engine. They saw one of the fastest growing companies in ad-supported media today, but also they saw incrementality, a way to reach users, consumers that they weren't necessarily reaching today. And so in that way, it's not, what we're proposing to do isn't that hard. We're adding incremental audience and very, very high value advertising product. Over half of our users are using Pluto on a connected television because, as Colin points out, those sessions are so long. The vast majority of our viewing it takes the form of connected TV. So these are largely big screen television impressions. They're brand safe. There's no fraud. They're unskippable. Nearly 100% completion. And so this is not just incremental audience, but also ultra high value inventory to add to an existing sort of sales portfolio.
Now, I'd say there's, if we look at our user base, up to 25% of our customers use XUMO as their only linear TV experience. And up to half use us plus occasional broadcast or cable TV. So it's an audience you can't get, it's an audience you can't find through traditional sort of TV buys. They're moving to this as the only platform they use.
And Alan, I think to your point before about like the explosion here in ad-supported OTT, this is why you're seeing it. I can't read an industry article without hearing about Viacom's acquisition of Pluto, and so there's a lot of people taking notice now, I think, because it's just so much more apparent, so much more in the press. It's much more abundant.
And it's funny because Jeff was just saying, I can't read an industry article without reading about Altissa's purchase of Cheddar.
That's right.
And people point it out to me all the time.
Yes. But now you guys have some sort of unique monetization things too, other than just running commercials, right?
Yeah, we have branded integrations. So what that means is we come up with the content editorially, and then we partner with the brand to enhance that content. So for example, we have a partnership with Chase for a show that's called Cheddar, which focuses on women in business. And so the whole show is interviews pretty much with women in business, executives, leaders, and it's brought to you by Chase. And we have several shows and segments along those lines. And so that's the advertising that we talk about generally. And then in addition, we've recently started rolling out programmatic advertising during our ad breaks as well. But the primary for Cheddar is a little bit different, as Alan was saying.
So I just one thing I want to bring up before I want to get into the actual sort of nuts and bolts of how this is all sold. We were talking about ad loads before. So 2 weeks ago today, Peter Naylor stood up at the Hulu upfront and said, hey, we are only going to have 90-second ad pods. That's it. Now, is that sort of the new standard, or is that works for Hulu, but you guys think that your audiences are aimed for more, or you should have different size ad pods? Is there going to be a continual push to sort of shrink these things down?
I think for that, their strategy, certainly it's an appealing thing to a consumer because you know what you get when that ad break starts, you know how many ads you're going to sit through. I think there's also a school of thought, where I'm more sort of a fan of, is to have a hard set preordained strategy is sometimes inappropriate. You can by dynamically varying the ad strategies, even to check groups of users or different hours of the day. We see ranges on the same channel of ad loads. A channel will sustain at prime time ad loads of 20 to 25 ads an hour. That same channel, 4 hours earlier, if you have 8 or 9 ads an hour, you're going to get people bailing out of the channel. We think by tailoring and optimizing based on user behavior, you can actually get an optimal experience. Also with rules, so you say you don't have to go above a certain threshold below a certain threshold. But yeah, we're much more in the fan of an optimized experience.
Agreed. So less ads per hour and shorter breaks, that's something I bet we all wind up agreeing on, but there's definitely no magic in a 90-second ad break. I would also point out that in terms of nuts and bolts, that would be very difficult to accommodate in a linear environment, where there will be a certain number of minutes that you need to fill because it's content, it's hours minus content equals ads. And so it would be much easier to apply a hard and fast rule for VOD only. My understanding is maybe that's what Hulu is doing. And then one other thing to point out that Colin was alluding to is when you run the networks and you own the platform, we can monitor all this stuff in real time. And so our users, our viewers will let us know when the ad breaks are too long or when there's too many ads, because they'll watch less of our service. And so we're able to constantly optimize.
That's very key.
Let's be honest, no one's knocking on your door asking for more ads, right? The key is I think the key point that you started talking about is better targeted ads, right? So can you show more high value ads to that user so they're not so annoyed with the advertising, they're actually engaged with the advertising, it's more relevant to them. And then they'll be less likely to complain about having more ads, right? So I think it just becomes sort of that balance. User experience really becomes about better ads, less ads that are better targeted, and hence the advertisers will pay more, so you're not losing revenue.
It's certainly true that more relevant ads help solve that problem. The ads are inherently less interruptive or painful. But I will say we take great pride in the fact that complaints regarding our advertising model, the fact that you have to watch non-skippable ads to watch Pluto, those complaints are rare. Virtually all of our consumers understand the bargain that they're making, that this is free television, this is a premium product. It ain't YouTube, this is a premium television product, and it's free. And so in exchange, they're giving us some of their time.
Yeah, that was something, we did this, TV Rev did this giant study on ad-supported OTT, which you all can save $50 on with the code FIERCE. But if you go to our website. But one of the things, that was my little plug there, one of the things that we found that was interesting that people fed back to us is that you don't use the clicker anymore on OTT. You can't just sort of, there's a commercial on, let me get rid of this. So even though it may be unskippable, just even, by intent, just by design, it's de jure, it's as opposed to de facto as opposed to de jure. It's really tough to sort of skip out of it, to come out of the OTT, to do something else to get past the ad, or find something else to do, and that was a big factor in brands saying, hey, we think this is great, and that when you look back at MVPD VOD 6 years ago, remember when they started making ads unskippable, people freaked out. They're like, what do you mean I can't skip past ads? That's not fair. And now people are completely used to it.
Well, I think it's also, when we started this off, we went to everybody and said, give us content for an ad-supported service, and we got digital brands, some magazines, they were the only guys that said, here's the content. And the yield that they would expect from small partners was very minimal. Fast forward to today, and you're talking about that barter, that contract with the user. The yield that content partners can now extract off of that, I talked about that half the cable TV ad loads. The yield per hour that can be extracted in net revenues for a content partner are superior to what they would get by participating in Amazon's Prime product. And that's with a low ad load. So it's not chump change, right? It actually, the scale is now getting big enough that it's starting to cause content companies. Cheddar is a great channel with us. They produce amazing, high quality content for this audience. And that's even making it all the wheel turn even faster. Right. So it's a three-way. It's the better content, good ads, and then consumers starting to see this is actually really worth spending time on. It's really resonant, very good quality content.
Yeah. So I want to talk about Cheddar and what your ad strategy is, and also just a little bit about the history. Did you guys start off thinking, hey, we're going to mostly be on TV, or was it you sort of started off digital and then the TV thing just happened?
It started off as 1 hour a day on Facebook Live, and then evolved pretty significantly and very quickly from there into a real network. So we mapped it out as, you need to have X amount of hours per day to be a real network, and then started making rounds to, at the time, the MVPDs and the AVOD services to get a carriage. And wound up building the whole network from that. And so from that 1 hour came 2 hours, then 4 hours, then 8 hours, very, very quickly. And so within, I think 6 months, we went from the 1 hour on Facebook Live to a full linear channel. And it was a quick ramp, but yeah, I mean, if you know John Steinberg, he's making it go.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting in itself that you've got three, what you could essentially call new channels, right? XUMO, Pluto, and Cheddar that started digitally as opposed to sort of the old way when somebody would buy stuff and launch it. But I want to get into the nuts and bolts. Now, Frank, you're the seller here. I'm the brand manager at P&G in charge of Pampers, and I want to buy, run my OTT, run my Pampers commercials on OTT. Like, what do I do? How do I figure out, what do I do? Like, because it's not like buying a Nielsen segment anymore. So what's the, like, how do I figure out what the segment is, who I want to buy, and who gives me those stats?
Sure. So obviously the Nielsen doesn't apply, right, in OTT. So the first thing that most brands that we talk to, they have a lot of their own data, right? So they know like audience segments that they're trying to reach. Right, so the key for them is then matching those audience segments to OTT, right? So how do we make that work, right? So our focus is on programmatic, right? So not just OTT, but also VOD environments and MVPDs, right? So, but how do we make it so that quote unquote race to the bottom doesn't happen, right? So the key is like tools for the publisher to help them see exactly which advertisers have access to their inventory, all the way down to the creative, be able to review all that, give all the tools and the pricing tools to the publisher to enable that. And then on the buy side, a lot of what's happening today is like they're bringing their own data, they're trying to match their own segments, and that's what they really care about. At the end of the day, they want what they're looking for is some sort of brand lift or purchase intent or even purchase itself. They're trying to look for, matching audiences, right? So as much as, so OTT is probably a lot more aligned with digital in that sense, even though it's on the big screen, in terms of targeting, right? So when we talk about highly targeted ads, it's all about, sort of matching those data from the publisher to what the brands are looking for.
Right. Now there's a couple ways you can buy OTT, right? You can buy via the programmatic, which the new PC term for programmatic is automated, because programmatic is a scary word. It means race to the bottom. So all these companies do this, and they do automated buying. You can buy it through one of the walled gardens, right? Through Roku or through Amazon, and then directly from the network themselves. Now, do you guys? I'll start at the end. Do you guys sell directly? Do you just use automated sellers, or also go through Roku? How does Cheddar sell? Do you guys chime in too?
For our native advertising, our brand integrations, we sell directly. We have a sales team specifically for that, and it's very high touch. And there's only a select number of brands that we work with. On the ad break side of things, the ad load, we do solely automated. We don't spend any time with our direct sales team doing that. But in a lot of our programmatic automated deals, there are, they themselves go out and do direct deals. So it's not necessarily a race to the bottom in that case.
Jeff, how do you guys sell?
We have a decent sized and growing sales force, which is independent but works closely with Viacom. That is agnostic. It's one sales force that covers both direct and automated. Right. And so it winds up becoming a function of servicing the particular client. And so there are many clients who want to know exactly what they're buying. They want the certainty of an upfront commitment. They want guaranteed access to inventory, and larger customers might even want access to value that they can't get on an automated basis. That might be a branded channel or even a pop-up channel that's dedicated just to them for some period of time. Because we, of course, own the guide and we make the channels. We can do those sorts of things. There are other buyers who want the flexibility and ease of automated buying, and so the same team will service those buyers as well.
Right. And do you sell through Roku and Amazon as well?
We do not. We have partners who have access, who purchase inventory from us, and so partners like a Roku or a Fire TV, you might add them to a list of revenue generating partners for us, but we don't leverage their sales force. No.
Right.
And to possibly oversimplify a little bit or overgeneralize is, there's basically three big pockets of cash in digital TV. There's the sponsored or the direct sold deals, a high handheld ones, it's insertion order based. There's programmatic guarantees where there's a commitment between buyer and seller for a specific channel or audience type, and then there's exchange type market audience buying. What's interesting in OTT, it's different to mobile and desktop, which are the precedent industries. No cookies in CTV.
Right.
It's very hard. You need good partners that we work with that, to be able to bring your data and buy that audience type buys is right now the smallest part of the market, because a digital planner can't just log in and grab an audience and retargeting cookies or whatever and run their campaign. So we see a lot of that programmatic guarantee, PMP specific deals looking for
what was it,
channels.
PMP? What is it?
Private marketplace.
Okay.
And then our direct sold is very popular because you can do cool integration, good units, special features. But I would expect that to be the highest growth sector, the audience type buying, because the tool set is starting to emerge for people to start using their data to buy TV on a data base right now.
We're seeing like 90% of OTT buys being PMPs.
Okay, and just will you define what a PMP is? Somebody, because I'm not 100% sure.
It's basically a private exchange. There's different forms of it, obviously, but it's basically.
So it's one concept that says a XUMO would just have its exchange, and it would only be XUMO inventory that was sold off of it?
It'll be a buyer would say, pull up or connect with XUMO to say, we want to buy your sports channel, your Latino audience for this price for this size deal over this time, and then we would agree to deliver that, and it'll be enacted through a programmatic or automated platform, but it's effectively treated like as if it was an insertion order or a contract. It's just nice and easy to transact, but it's for specific and it's guaranteed, so it won't be superseded by other deals. We'll make sure that it's delivered in full, on time, beautiful, tidy, happiness for everybody. So yeah.
Good. Okay, so I'm back to being this mythical Pampers brand manager, and I bought my ads, and I went through private marketplaces, and I even bought my own Cheddar channel and made life good. But now my bosses want to know, like, well, how many people saw this? How are we measuring all this stuff, Frank? I mean, you guys, you're selling it. I'm sure that people want to know how is it being measured?
Yeah, I mean that's a really good question. It varies depending on brand, right? Like it has their own specific measurement. Generally speaking, it's still fairly measured on a household level, like not necessarily one-to-one. We're talking CTV specifically,
right?
Obviously mobile.
And again, just quickly, so CTV is that subset of OTT, which is watched on an actual television set, which is like 80 to 90% of it. The two terms are often used interchangeably, and one of the many confusions we found in our report in the study, we talked about 100 people off the record at brands, networks, and ad agencies, and that was a big one. Is like, why do people keep using these two terms? And the easiest answer is marketing. But
well, the great thing about you can bring your own measurement a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Right. So like the great thing about like I guess automated, you're calling it, programmatic,
Yeah.
is even the direct sales teams are still, a lot of those being executed programmatically via guaranteed deals, right? So they can still bring their own measurement. They're not forced into, a bucket that they have to use, right? So that's kind of like the great thing about it. It also makes it fairly confusing because there's no standard sort of currency that everyone transacts off of, which is Nielsen, right?
Right. I mean, do you guys, what are some of the different ways that people could measure stuff? Is it
Well, I think
is it ACR? Do you guys rely on ACR or?
in a limited fashion, I think ACR could. So that's audio content recognition in the device. So that it's measuring the content delivery at sort of the last moment.
Right. The last, yeah.
And I do think that'll play a role. I think one of the things that has gone unmentioned so far is that we're talking about measuring the audience. We're talking about targetability, addressability, and making OTT feel more like television buying, where you're buying audiences. But that said, it starts out as among the most measurable media, right? I mean, this is digital from the get-go. The ads are dynamically served. We know that they were delivered, and in the case of connected television, we know that it has nearly 100% completion rate. It starts out as a superior product, and then from there, you find ways to layer on other data sources to understand more about exactly who is watching.
Right. But doesn't that sort of raise the whole grading or homework issue?
No, it's 'cause it's-
Third parties are serving.
Third parties are, okay.
Third parties are serving.
So they're the ones who are, they're the ones who
in
are
our
giving
case,
you
that would
that.
be like Freewheel, for example.
Okay, there you go. Okay.
Who's a large industry-leading provider who, in that case, maybe not with respect to audience composition, but with respect to ad delivery, is an accepted common currency.
It's interesting. I've been in digital advertising for a bit, but I'm actually a little frustrated by how people are not making full use in advertisers of the capabilities of this. You're talking about measurement, and most of our advertisers, and it's for a variety of reasons, called campaign performance view-through rate. I think, am I hitting this number of users, and are they watching most of the way to the end of the ads? And we go in and we pitch. You can track through the in-store sales. You can see if somebody goes to a second screen in the home and configures a car. These are all capabilities which exist because it is plumb, it's built on digital, but buyers are still very preoccupied with, it's just target my user, my subset, and it's not even very, always cases, very advanced targeting, and it's just view through rate. So I think there's a lot can happen when people start realizing just how many interesting things you can measure. And so I think there's not much in the way of good attribution still in OTT. It's very basic by and large. The capabilities are much greater than the market is making, is taking advantage of.
Is that because there's still a lot of silo in agencies and whatnot, so you're having TV people who might not understand it or
they're tricky to set up. I mean, I guess, you're going to do a deal, you want to spend a lot of money, you have to have a provider, and you have to configure them and get third parties involved, and there's complexity there. But I think companies like this specialize in digital, have the ability to take a lot of that complexity out.
Dan, do you have anything that you guys are seeing with measurement, or?
Just a lot of confusion, and it would be good to get it straightened out. It's all over the place for us.
Yeah, I mean, now that was probably the biggest source of the confusion that we heard about in this report, is that you have a lot of people from a TV background who are used to, what's the ratings, what's the numbers, and what you're saying makes perfect sense. That Freewheel can measure it, and a lot of these other companies, they want to know what is this based off of? How am I getting these numbers? How are you determining the CPM? It's a very different way of thinking about things, and that seems to be a lot of it.
It's different, but there's an evolution, right? So, like, for example, we're working with MVPDs to enable their VOD programmatically, right? So, but initially they're like, this is really confusing. I don't understand how to measure it, et cetera. But then they saw this could be more targeted and we get higher CPMs. I can make more money, right? So then they start learning more about it because it's sort of the money's there, right? So I think just related to the TV folks in the room, the opportunities is there to sort of bring a lot of TV inventory into sort of a digital-based world and bring the TV buyers along with them, right? It's just like that understanding needs to happen, and I think like the money will follow.
Okay, and on that note, we've got about 2-3 minutes left. I'm going to open it up to questions. I see the gentleman in the red jacket. Pink, yeah.
First, I want to say a quick comment and question.
Also, can you identify yourself?
Oh, yes. I'm Damien. I'm the CEO of Reverie. We've been on XUMO for a year and Pluto for 2 years as your only LGBTQ network, so thank you for supporting our community. My question is, we sell a lot of our inventory direct because we're a niche streaming service with channels on MVPDs at high premiums, like $35 to $60. Our issue now that we're facing is not the lack of inventory, but more the demand from the digital buyer wanting actionable items like CPAs, being able to measure more the action after the impression. What type of technology are you guys creating, or maybe you can give an insight to that will support more that digital buyer to be able to give that measurement to that ad buyer?
You know, the capabilities are significant. They do require specific, probably working very closely, because how you configure the campaign using beacons or pixels, what the feedback loop is, what's the objective. It's one thing just to enact it, but to have an idea of what effect you're having on behalf of your advertiser does require more collaboration. But the capabilities are similar. There's a little bit of a step because you have to use an IP address to do attribution. Sometimes you don't buy a car on a TV. You go to your second screen and do it. So that's a little extra. But there are enormous capabilities. It's the discussion and is the scale there as well.
Yeah, I've not seen anything that works really well in the TV environment just yet. So in like sort of the desktop mobile world, there's like unified IDs, and there's like a library ID. There's always different attribution, like technologies that people are using. It's not quite there in CTV yet, right? And the other thing is we're talking about video advertising, right? It's not a banner ad that you're clicking on buying something on Amazon, right? So it's a little more difficult. But there are definitely like some solutions out there. There's nothing that's like this is the solution for attribution in the sort of CTV landscape.
Right. I mean, you're starting to see companies like iSpot and Data Plus Math do something that you either hear called multi-touch attribution or business outcomes, where they're using a lot of algorithms to sort of track the user through the sales funnel. When did they click on cars? When did they start Googling cars? When did they Google German cars? When did they make the appointment with the BMW dealer, etc.? They do that by modeling lookalike audiences to get into the weeds on it. So people who are similar, who didn't see the ad, people who saw the ad, what did they do? It's still in its early days, but it's getting a lot. It's been getting a lot of traction. Okay.
Hi, Andrea from Tubi. Just a question really, I guess, for Colin and Jeff. What are your thoughts on the competitive landscape in AVOD this year with Amazon Free Dive, with the Roku channel, and obviously rumors of all the big Bs getting into the business?
When I joined, I was privileged to be an advisor to Pluto TV for several years before I joined full-time. I joined full-time a little less than 2 years ago, and when I did, one of the first things I said to the team after I saw how much progress they had made, I said the flip side of this momentum is competition. Right? Like, don't imagine that we get to do something so big alone. And so competition is starting to show up, and it will continue to. But at the same time, I also offered some promising advice about how, in my opinion, media businesses are flywheels. Right? Netflix is a brilliant example, but I think now Pluto is as well, where you establish momentum in terms of audience that lets you generate more revenue, which lets you afford more content and marketing. And so, our plan at Pluto is to execute this accelerating flywheel now with the inputs from Viacom. We launched 14 channels earlier this week. It took us less than 2 months. This is leveraging, iconic Viacom brands like Comedy Central and MTV, and Paramount. We brought Spike back, remember that? So we renamed our male-focused channel Spike. And then they'll help us on ad sales, and then they'll help us on distribution. Bob announced our Latin American expansion plans, which, trust me, were not on the whiteboard before we were acquired by Viacom. And so that's how we'll. So we, one, acknowledge competition, and that's two, how we have plans to address it.
Andrea, hi, good to see you again. Actually, so we've got two businesses effectively. We've got our direct-to-consumer, our app, where it's a XUMO app you can get on your phone. But we also power enterprise solutions for big companies, including Roku, right? So, because we see our role, we've learned to be good at this video ad hoc, this linear delivery. And we see our customers as our content partners. Our role is to help them get more eyeballs, get more discovery. And so companies like Roku work with us and others, and we bring that content into their environments. So we want them to be successful. And we have a very open, transparent architecture as well. We allow multiple sales models to exist, so they can sell the ads, we can sell the ads, content partners can sell the ads. And so that also makes it so we just want to be enablers. So it's a little bit about how our DNA sort of a little different. We like, we're very big fans of some of these companies.
Yeah, and just to echo what Jeff said, as an analyst, I'm constantly hearing, not constantly, but often enough hearing from companies who are seeing what y'all are doing and thinking, hey, we want in on this. They're telling me, there's still a whole lot of content out there that hasn't even been digitized yet, so that there seems to be, and so someone's giving them money too, so there seems to be, the flywheel effect. I like that. In the back in the yellow there.
Sure. So, Frank, you alluded to earlier about the fact that your business has sort of shifted in the last 2 years from being like 10%, OTT to being 70%. So I guess the question I have is, have you seen the CPMs increase commensurate with the volume in that space? And I realize that varies where you're going, right? So in a common world, right, is that going up? And secondarily, at what point do you actually hit scale where you're, in terms of distribution, where you're actually attractive to big non-endemic advertisers?
I think we're kind of in the second part of that question. We're getting close to that. We've seen a lot of local advertisers looking at CTV now, right? So like just in terms of like the density of buyers, like whereas 2 years ago it may have been just a handful of buyers, now we're seeing hundreds of buyers. Right, so that's starting to scale out, and that sort of is related to this your CPM question, right? So like we'll get like a more premium CPM from like a local buyer versus a national buyer. We'll negotiate the price down based off of volume buys, right? So we haven't seen a huge decline in CPMs as the volume's gone up. But yeah, depending on the needs of the buyer, right? So like we'll negotiate like a lower rate for a much bigger buy, right? So it's very traditional sort of like TV advertising type of like negotiations there, but no, there hasn't been a significant decline in CPMs. It's still, the inventory is still fairly scarce from the buy side.
Right. It seems like that would be a more engaged environment. You could actually make the case for higher CPMs than you could in a traditional environment. No.
One of the most sort of, it just struck me the other day, we're doing some research, and it's just like big screen, you're on your TV, and we were looking at Nielsen data, we're integrated with Nielsen, and there's typically 2.5 sets of eyeballs in a room. That single ad impression that you run, you are 2.5 times the probability somebody will log on and buy a car or configure a car, or maybe not the youngsters in that case, but it's extremely effective, and as an advertising medium, it's very, very powerful, more than I've ever seen in certainly display ads and other things. So the combination of effect and scarcity is actually causing CPMs to go up slightly now. I don't think they expect that to continue, but we're seeing it actually in a slight appreciation on CPMs on our side.
But if you have like a TV network, for instance, and you want to make it a complementary buy, you can make the case that it should all be the same CPM or even more in that curated environment.
Our position is absolutely that living room impressions are premium impressions and merit premium pricing, for sure.
Okay, time for one last question if anybody has. Otherwise, you can all go and get drinks. So thank you guys very much.